Welcome to the 56th episode of the GameFor Podcast. In this episode, still back in the office, we'll talk about games we'd like to see made from other games, swapping genres. I'm Adam.
I'm Matt.
And this is the GameFor Podcast. GameFor is a platform to help connect tabletop gamers and to help you get more out of your tabletop gaming. Matt and I are part of a software development and design company called Milkcan, and because most of the folks at Milkcan love tabletop games, we developed the GameFor app and launched it in early 2018. We launched this companion podcast in June 2019 to help tabletop gamers get more enjoyment out of their hobby. Due to the COVID-19 global pandemic, we hibernated the GameFor app in July of 2020 and plan to bring back a retooled version of the app for Android, iOS, and web when gaming in person is safer. Until then, we'll keep bringing you this podcast to help you get more out of your tabletop gaming.
Yeah.
We've been working on the app.
We have been hard working.
Yeah. So that's good. I'm glad to see it. Not everywhere. I mean, like things are getting better in the United States currently, but other countries
they were getting better now.
Well, yeah. But so we're keeping an eye on not just that, but obviously overseas as well, and not just overseas too, but like over land, like Canada,
right. Next door,
Mexico, right?
Yep.
So yeah, but what kind of things have you been doing since our last episode, hobby related?
Yeah, so due to a scheduling mix-up, which happens,
Sure, does.
Our
one of the things we want to fix with the GameFor app.
Exactly. Our role-playing group, instead of playing Pathfinder, we ended up doing a one-shot of a game called Vazen, I believe is
Vazen? I don't know.
Yeah, but it's coined as a Nordic horror role-playing game. So it takes place in, I believe, the 1800s.
Okay.
So the 19th century. I always try to get those two mixed up.
Yeah, I know.
But you're in the Scandinavian countries, and there's a bunch of different roles you can play, but basically you can see supernatural stuff that others can't. You kind of have the gift of the sight, and
okay.
So, but you're investigating. So there's some investigation horror stuff. Has a really cool mechanic where it's all D6 based, and it's not really the total that you're rolling. It's really you just have to roll a 6 to pass, and then to get better at your skills and stuff like that, you get more dice to throw. So
and then you get more successes, potentially.
Right.
Yeah.
You can still throw like 8 dice and get none,
Sure.
or you can roll 2 and get 2.
Yeah.
It's kind of a neat mechanic, and our game master Nathan, it was actually his own one shot that he had written, and it was a lot of fun.
That's cool.
Yeah, I really liked it. So
yeah.
But yeah, other than that, we found out that we have dampness in our basement.
It's never good.
Yeah, so luckily it's only on one half of the house, but it's still going to be a mess, so we've got to move everything kind of out of most of the rooms in that part of the house, so my gaming space is kind of being taken over. So I've been moving stuff around there. Finally got organizing my 3D printers because I also bought a second Saturn printer because I have a problem.
Saturn?
Yeah.
You said you have a problem?
I have a problem.
Well, I'm
I'm using them.
Yeah,
You're I feel like I'm starting to collect them now.
Well, but it's you're using them for you're doing production for all kinds of different things, not just for personal projects. Either,
right. Yeah, there's a lot of printing. In fact, I keep forgetting to do my personal projects, so
sure, yeah.
It's kind of funny, but I'll get back to that. But yeah. It's lots of printing, but it's fun to see other projects that people find and get to print. So.
Oh yeah. No, I've been seeing on the subreddit and the two different Facebook groups for Reign in Hell, the game that Vince and I made. I'm seeing a lot of people printing all kinds of stuff, for their cabals, the different types of demons and things like that. And it's astounding the amount of stuff that's out there and people's creativity and what they're producing. It's really super cool.
Yeah, I've got some transparent red that I'm going to be using and
resin
for my Reign in Hell.
That'd be very cool.
Demons. So that we'll see how that comes out.
Yeah, I think that'd be very cool.
Yeah. How about you?
Let's see. Well, I actually played a game with a person in person. I know, it was weird. Yeah, actually, Sam Lenz and I, we got together. Sam Lenz, painter extraordinaire. You know him. You people out in the audience may know him if you've seen him on my YouTube channel, but he's got his own YouTube channel now as well, and
Twitch
kind of stuff. Yeah,
everything.
Well, he hasn't been doing Twitch for a while because he doesn't have good internet currently. But he hopes to be getting back to it soon because it looks like he's going to be moving this summer. So
yeah.
He's been off Twitch for about a year, but soon to be returning. Anyway, we got together and played Warcry, which was a lot of fun. We used his terrain, and we were originally going to play at the local shop, and then it turned out, because it was the day after 4th of July, it was closed, which we did not expect, but there it was. So then we went to my studio and played there, and I happened to have a table that was just barely big enough, so that was helpful. I mean, I've got my 4x6 table for battle reports and stuff like that, but it is currently covered in photographic shenanigans. Like all the kind of fancier photos I've been taking lately of miniatures with backgrounds and stuff and all kinds of terrain and all that, that's all on that table because I haven't done any battle reports in quite some time because of COVID. So, so we just played on that smaller table and it was fine because that's one of the nice things about Warcry is that it's something you can play on it's a 22 by 30 inch board. That's
nice not bad at all.
Yeah. So it worked great.
Yeah.
I did not win, but it's okay. We still had a fun time. I ran my Skaven Plague Monks, the 13 as they are known, and he ran the Untamed Beasts, which is one of the specific Warcry factions that you can get. And but hopefully we'll do a rematch soon. I'm looking forward to it.
So did you plan to have the 13, or it just magically happened that way? Did you see? Was that
that was not my plan?
Okay.
I was I'm okay. I've got a whole bunch of these plague monks, and so I'll just do a very simple list because I had a whole bunch of them already built for other reasons,
right?
Age of Sigmar mainly. So I had a whole bunch of them that already had the little stabby knives and the woe staff. So I was like, well, I'll just do all of them that way, and then they just have one leader who's the guy holding the book. And so then I started doing the numbers and looking it up, and then all of a sudden I'm like, well, it's 1,000 points almost, or 955, or 995, or 990, or something like that.
Okay.
It's very close to 1,000 points. I'm like, oh, cool. I'm like, it's 13 models. And I was like, 13 models. I wonder if it wasn't something that the designers decided to do. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
How deep does this onion go? I don't know if that's an actual term.
If not, it's going to be now.
Going to be now. There you go. So yeah, did that. That was fun. And otherwise, in regular hobby stuff, I started painting one of my Space Weirdos groups. Space Weirdos is a fun little mini agnostic, tiny little 16-page PDF sci-fi skirmish game made by Garsky Games. And I've been enjoying reading it, and it didn't take real long. It's 16 pages. But, so I'm looking forward. I'm building a couple of groups for it so that I can maybe even do some battle reports and stuff. So I took some Necromunda models, predominantly House Delac, or possibly Delaque. I don't know. It depends on who you talk to. But took a bunch of those models, kind of gave them different heads, slightly different weapons here and there, that kind of stuff.
Okay.
And I'm in the process of painting them. It's not blowing me up yet. I'm not absolutely looking at these paint jobs and going, I'm really in love with it. There's something not quite there yet, and I haven't been able to figure it out. So I'm going to have to try to fix that. Or, I could strip it and start over, but I kind of don't want to because it's a lot of work. I guess in the grand scheme of things, I could just prime over the top again. It's not like I've been putting on thick paints. It's been predominantly washes and contrasts and stuff like that. And they're pretty thin, but I don't know. We'll see. I will hopefully be able to pull that out of the fire, as it were. And then I'm working on, and I haven't finished building yet, but I'm working on a group of, they're from the new Games Workshop Dominion box, which was the new Age of Sigmar launch box. And there's a group of these weird little, they're called hobgrots. They're like hobgoblin grots. They're, I don't know. They're not orcs, they're not grots, they're kind of in between. And they're weird looking, and so I gave a bunch of them guns, even though they were just supposed to have spears and swords. But I'm going to use them for Space Weirdos and such. So yeah, right now trying to figure out how to finish them up model-wise, and then I'll start painting them, which I'm looking forward to.
Very nice.
I don't know what color I'm going to go with their skin tones. They're kind of a yellowy sort of color in the game in Age of Sigmar, but I was thinking I don't want to go green because it's a little too orky.
Right.
I don't know. I was thinking
Purple,
maybe
blue.
I was thinking a little blue maybe, but my other guys
blue.
are kind of blue too. Their outfits are, not their skin, because you don't really see their skins.
I would do
a
light blue, almost like a Robin or a Sky. Or
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure. I don't mind purple. I think that'd be kind of fun too. So yeah, and then otherwise I've just been working on some terrain projects. I've got some 3D printed buildings, some that I got from Imperial Terrain a long time ago, had them print that are going to be for Star Wars Legion, and so I've been working on those a little bit here and there. And then I've got you printing me some stuff from an offshoot of Imperial Terrain, which is a company called, well, I don't know if it's a company, but it's at least a website called terrainmachine.com. And it's a neat website where you can just kind of go in and like build your own terrain. Like it's, it makes like let's say you want a square building. Okay, cool. Then you go through and you can pick each wall and you can move even some components around it. And it's all happening in a browser. It's not a piece of, programming.
Yeah, it's like Hero Forge for terrain.
A little bit, yeah. I mean, it's right now they have basically like one kind of set that's very kind of Tatooine sort of Mos Eisley. They've got one that you could kind of technically use for Necromunda, and they have another one that's just sort of a little bit generic sci-fi, which is what I did.
Yep.
And then, so you basically kind of build everything, you spin it all around, it's all 3D, and you do all this stuff, and you're like, cool. And then you save it, and they produce it as a STL file, and then you pay them depending on the size of the building. So, like, I think, a building might cost anywhere from $3 to $4 as much as maybe I think, 12 max. But then you can print it, because now you got the STL, you can print it as many times as you want.
Yeah, and it does a bunch of different STLs, so it's all broken up already, pieced out, and they print up really nice, I have to say. Like,
no, the first one you brought it worked really well.
Like, I did not have to do really anything to get them ready to print, so the prep work was nice, which is not always the case, but they know what they're doing.
Yeah, so I'll use those buildings for Space Weirdos, Stargrave, stuff like that. They're not particularly Star Wars-y. I could technically work them into some sort of Star Wars Legion sort of situation, but I've got enough Star Wars Legion buildings right now. I don't think I need any more.
It could always be a planet nobody's seen yet.
Yeah, exactly, that's true. So that's pretty much what I've got going on with my hobby.
Nice.
So we got a lot of comments from the last episode, which was really nice on YouTube.
Yeah, it was awesome. It seemed like there was some good discussion. I saw even some back and forth, and
And so those of you that haven't listened to the last episode, it was basically about what kind of tabletop games would we like to see from movies and TV. And so a lot of people have opinions about that, which is very cool, and we like that kind of stuff. So we've kind of decided to sort of spread it out a little bit. Now, this one's not the same as last week. What we're doing this week is we're talking instead about what kind of games, tabletop games, we'd like to see made from other tabletop games, generally like swapping genres and things like that.
Yeah, like mashing them up.
And then next episode, we're going to probably talk about tabletop games made from
books and comics.
Books and comics, yeah. So it's kind of like a 3-part series of like, we'd like to see games made out of X. And then,
that way we get all the royalty rights.
Exactly. If you're a big time fancy designer out there, hit us up. But some examples of games that have been already done in this fashion. I mean, you were talking about that new Magic the Gathering Forgotten Realms thing.
Yeah, the Forgotten Realms expansion that's coming out, I believe next Friday, or so, depending on when you listen to this. But yeah, they've got a lot of they're going way back on some stuff like to D&D 1 and stuff. So yeah, lots of fun stuff there. Like I've got some Magic friends that have been sending me cards like, oh hey, check this one out and stuff like that. So.
I mean, Wizards has been doing a lot of kind of crossover stuff with Magic lately. They're also, I don't know if it's out currently, but I know there was a 40K kind of crossover, like Warhammer 40K thing. There was a Godzilla crossover within Magic. There was also
Walking Dead,
yeah, and probably some other things that I haven't heard of as a not real Magic player or anything like that. But yeah, other examples, speaking of Magic as well, Wizards of the Coast did a board game, miniatures game, sort of gateway game, as I like to call it, called Arena of the Planeswalkers, and there were several, there were like a bunch of expansions as well, and they were pre-paints, so you got, your miniatures and everything in there in the game, but they were pre-painted, kind of like the HeroClix sort of stuff, not great paint jobs or anything like that, but it worked out relatively well. And that game, like I said, it was inexpensive and it sold relatively well, I think. I saw it at a lot of different shops and stuff like that. So that's another kind of crossover. And then another one that I know a lot of people are starting to like, I think it's Cubicle 7 is the name of the company that makes it, but it's called Soulbound, and it's basically an RPG based off of Warhammer Age of Sigmar, which is the
nice.
fantasy version of the fantasy version of the Warhammer stuff.
Sure.
So yeah, I know several people who play that and enjoy it, and I think they've made not like tons and tons of extra books for it yet, which is sort of surprising. Well, it's not Games Workshop, that's why. Technically, it's somebody else. But yeah, the idea is a pretty thick book from what I've seen. So if you're into that whole thing, if you're into the Age of Sigmar type lore and things like that, then you can definitely, I think it would be a cool thing. So we're going to kind of talk a little bit about some ideas we've got about games we'd like to see basically move from one genre to another. What's your first one? What would you like to see?
The first one is going to be Spelljammer.
Mm-hmm.
I'm addicted to Spelljammer.
Yeah.
But Spelljammer is like a board game. I'm thinking like the Firefly game that was...
Gale Force 9, I think, made that.
Yeah. Which was really fun. So I'm thinking kind of like that, but with the fantasy elements. And where you can kind of even level up your character, your captain and stuff like that, rather than always having to get new crew, but you could kind of level up in that way, but also kind of that exploring.
Spelljammer was, for those that don't know, was
D&D's
in
space, basically. Yep.
Yeah, it was basically like you had these ships, like they looked like sailing ships, but they were run by like wizards.
Yeah, magic. They had a magical bubble and
and they would fly around in space and go places and such. I'm assuming.
Right. Yeah, you could do everything from just cargo runs to like being like a full out pirate and trying to take over other ships. Or
that's kind of cool. Yeah, I remember seeing it. And I never played it, but I remember seeing it in shops all the time and stuff like that. And like the cover was always just like a bunch of people like on an old wooden type of boat with a bunch of extra weird shenanigans going on, and then space just around them and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's still my favorite. SSI that made the D&D. Video games.
Like the add-ons and stuff like that. Yeah.
So yeah, that was my favorite by far. I played that a lot. But
yeah.
So I'm thinking a board game would probably be pretty easy with that kind of
Yeah, I mean, like especially because the Firefly board game, I don't know if it was crazy popular, but it seemed was it?
It was pretty popular, and there was tons of expansions. So like the ones
there was a lot of expansions. So that you're right. If there's a bunch of expansions, generally that means that it sold well. They don't usually expand stuff that doesn't sell. That's a good point. But yeah, no, I mean, I think that something like that could be kind of cool, certainly. And board game, well, do you think that board games are more positively impacted by licensing than, say, like RPGs, miniatures, that kind of stuff? I've seen a lot more board games based off of TV shows and things like that, and movies and stuff. I think like Battlestar Galactica and like that did really well. And
I think now they are. I think before it was almost like a complete like write off. Like you're like, oh, okay, well I'm probably not going to buy that
licensed
game.
Oh, yeah. Sure, yeah. Well, Dune. I mean, but that was a book. But still, Dune was super popular, and it's actually right now very popular because the movie's going to be coming out, and some new Dune games have come out. I know I was looking at the Board Game Geek top 50, the hotness as they call it, the list, and I think a couple of the Dune games that are coming out right now are on the top of the list. So that's very cool. I think a Spelljammer board game, I think it'd be kind of cool. That would be especially because it would bring in the people who remember the old game. I think that the theme itself, even for people who don't remember the old game, would probably be attractive to folks who are this is cool. Fantasy Pirates in Space. Yeah, no, that'd be pretty cool. So I was thinking,
and
I'm going to probably say this a lot, but a tabletop miniatures game version of, I'm a big miniatures fan, a tabletop miniatures game version of the board game Scythe, I think would be pretty cool, because Scythe it's this kind of alternate sort of history, like vaguely, like very early, like pre-Soviet, right? Like kind of Tsar, kind of like pseudo Eastern European, Russian, whatever.
Right, it's not really steampunky.
It's a little. I mean, you got these big mechs, and then you got people farming next to them. You know what I mean?
True.
Like,
it's just a cool vibe.
I could definitely right now. There's this kind of movement there's a bunch of different movements in when you get into the deep geekery behind different people who like to make miniatures and like to produce like kit bash stuff and paint things. One of the big popular ones is called Inquisition 28 or Inc 28 INQ, and that is people who love to kit bash and make things that are based vaguely off of Games Workshop's sort of IP of like the Inquisition game from the early 2000s.
Okay.
So the Inquisition game was a small-scale skirmish game of inquisitors and their retinues fighting whatever.
Okay.
It was wildly not particularly popular because it was, first of all, it was 54 millimeter, which is a very squirrely size. You need new terrain for everything, and these models are a lot bigger and all this kind of junk. That's a weird thing. Also, it kind of was a miniature game that sort of required a DM.
Okay.
Which is also a little weird.
Yeah.
So what has happened in the years since is that people are just like, it was a cool concept. We're just going to try to fix it, and we're just going to make it so you've got a decent game set, and it's also 28 millimeter. And so it's people who make these amazing looking, almost kind of John Blanche, who was one of the artists for Games Workshop at the time, who did these crazy, it's almost frenetic kind of drawings and a lot of warm tones. And so people make these models that are very interesting and cool. All that to say, there's another kind of thing out there, another movement out there called Turnip 28.
Okay.
Which is basically like you take like Napoleonic or that kind of era models, and you sometimes give them slightly fancier guns.
Okay.
And then you kind of grunge them up, or you're doing a lot of kind of like enamel washes and stuff like that, so you get these kind of grungy looks and things. And very frequently, and I don't quite understand why, you also have like literally like reeds and bushes and grasses, like they've been stuffing their armor with it, and it's sticking out the edges.
They're not like scarecrows, right?
They're not technically scarecrows, but they kind of look like scarecrows from a distance. Maybe they're using it for camouflage, or maybe they're just like, well, I need extra padding inside my armor, so I'm just going to stuff a bunch of reeds in there. I don't know. But it just seems to be this modeling thing. You can find it, just type in Turnip28 into Instagram, and you're going to find a whole bunch of examples of what I'm talking about. And there are different people out there who are making now like rule sets that are like, here's a free rule set if you want to play Turnip 28 and actually have a use for these models you keep making. Nice. So that type of thing to me is the ground troops, and then weird, dirty, steampunky mechs are the rest of it, and then boom, there's your Scythe miniatures game. I knew I was going to get it back around to it.
Yeah, no, I figured you were. So.
Sometimes I do. But yeah, I think that would be kind of cool. I mean, obviously, it's a little bit more DIY. Like, a company is probably not going to sell you, here's a bunch of miniatures and here's a bunch of weird grass. You know what I mean? Like, obviously, you can buy weird grass to put on the bases of your miniatures, but I don't know. It's just it's an interesting concept, I think. And Scythe is got a lot more going on in its story and that kind of stuff, and it's also a pretty popular board game still.
Yep.
It's been out for, 4 years now? Maybe more?
Oh, easily more.
Yeah. So, I don't know. I think that'd be kind of a cool thing for them to make a miniatures game, or to just make a rule set and then let's make our own miniatures. That'd be kind of cool too. What you got next?
Okay, so this one, there's a few games out there. The Unseen, I believe, is one, but I figured I'd throw Captain Sonar in as kind of the more well-known, the more marketable one. But basically, an RPG where your group is are all in a, like, say, World War II era sub, and you've got to work together to do your missions and everything else. But basically, trying to get that like claustrophobic feel, teamwork, and trying to figure out missions and stuff like that, like where you're in a sub.
Do you think that it would be one of those, and this is more of an indie thing again, but you know how like one-off RPGs are pretty popular amongst the indie crowd.
It might
would this be that, or do you think it would be, I mean, you could do a campaign.
You could do a campaign.
I mean, you would be basically getting, it would be interesting because you'd be getting probably orders from like higher ups to say,
right, and maybe there's some assaulting. You've got to try to break into a base. I know, like the Unseen game I'm talking about. You're trying to go against another sub and basically sabotage their base, their sub base. So you're trying to sneak in, blow up their gasoline, their fuel reserves and stuff like that.
Fuel depot.
Yep.
And such. Yeah. Oh, that's kind of cool. Yeah, I think that would be kind of interesting. I'd like to see, like, again, whether it would be more of an indie style, like one-off RPG, which I think those are a lot of fun, especially like if your group is just like, ugh, we've been just doing this Pathfinder for so long and we just want to take a quick break, and like doing a one-off once in a while is a lot of fun. There was a great one-off that I enjoyed called, Battle Among the Stars or something like that. It's 316 something. I can't remember the name now. I can picture the book. It was like one of those books that instead of being tall, it was like long. You know what I mean? Like almost like a landscape instead of a portrait mode type of book. But it was an indie game book, and it was about basically going to other planets and then meeting interesting aliens and then killing them. And it was, again, like I said, it was predominantly a one-off kind of game. Nice. But it was a lot of fun, though. And so, yeah. So, yeah, I think that'd be pretty cool. And Captain Sonar is a board game that...
You're competing against another team. It's like a cooperative sort of thing. Right. It's usually 4 against 4. You can play, I believe, as low as 2 against 2, but normally it's really only real fun at 4 versus 4.
Sure.
Which makes it kind of almost a party game because you need 8 people, but yeah.
And it's basically like you telling... Like, it's almost like a game of telephone in some situations, isn't it?
Yeah, there's some telephone, and you're trying to like one guy, the radio guy, is trying to listen in on the other team to try to figure out where they're at.
Yeah.
You're trying to, yeah. One guy's just trying to keep the ship from falling apart. And
yeah. Have you ever played The Captain is Dead?
I have not.
Okay.
I know what you're talking about.
I didn't know if that was the same type of thing. No, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Let's see here. So another tabletop miniatures game version of a game that I would like to see, strangely enough,
okay,
is based probably off of the Root/Oath board games, like the stuff from Leader Games.
Yeah.
So Leader Games has made I think one of the first games they made was called Vast.
Yep.
AKA the Crystal Caverns, I think. They may have had to change the name at one point because there was some sort of issue. I think it originally was just going to be called the Crystal Caverns, but then they had to change it to Vast, or I forget. The other way around.
Mm-hmm.
And it was this kind of interesting game where you're playing, like, one person's playing the knight, one person's playing the goblins, one person's actually playing the caverns, the dungeon, and it's a interesting game based off of that. And then the artwork... I absolutely love the artwork by a guy named Kyle Farron. It's just spectacular stuff. I've always been a big fan of his work. And he's been continuing to work with this company, and then they made a game called Root, which was pretty wildly popular in the board game world. And it's basically kind of like a war game, kind of like a Risk almost type of thing, where you've got like a large map, and it's not like direct combat, but it's like the mice versus the cats versus the crows.
Woodland creatures.
Yeah. And again, like really super cool artwork, and I don't want to say it's cute. It is cute. It's adorable. It's great, but it's also really, really well done and really interesting.
Right.
It's not cutesy.
It's cute and vicious.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Absolutely. And I think a minis game based off of that. With actual,
just the minis themselves would be.
Fun. Yeah. Like actual 3-dimensional miniatures based off of Kyle's work, I think would be spectacular, and I would want to buy them and paint them. And then like a cool skirmish game kind of thing. Fights out in the woods and stuff like that, like, small parties fighting against each other. I think that would be spectacular. The new game is called Oath, and it's also quite good. I got to take a cough. And so, yeah, I think that would be very cool. And I mean, I'd like to say, gosh, I hope that, they've already started on it. I doubt if they would. It's kind of a big undertaking.
Yeah.
But I do know that Kyle, because he and I have talked at Gen Con, I know that he's a fan of miniatures, so I don't know, maybe he's teaching himself Blender or one of those other 3D programs on the side, and eventually they'll start making, I don't know, just make some STLs. That's all we want. I'll buy them, Yeah.
That's
so that'd be very cool too. Yeah, absolutely. What else you got?
All right, so this one I was thinking was the game King of Tokyo, which is a board game where basically big monsters like Godzilla type, King Kong,
Kaiju.
Yeah, all these are fighting against each other, but as a CCG. So you could collect them, and then if they work with whoever owns King Kong and Godzilla rights now.
Universal? No. I don't remember who.
Yeah.
I know what
but I think you could easily get the property rights for that, I would think, for a game. Maybe not, but...
Well, easily is maybe a strong term. I mean, like, you could. With enough money, which
right.
is not the easy part, unfortunately. But
then I think you could make some money, and then you've got you got Mothra, you got...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I think there'd be a lot of fun ones to collect. And
well, they don't use Godzilla and King Kong directly in King of Tokyo, do they?
No.
No.
They're all playoffs.
Cthulhu, don't they?
Yes,
but
because Cthulhu is open.
Yeah, it's public domain now. I would
yep.
assume. But they have like a Kong-looking character, and
right? So I mean, so they could still kind of do that, but I think marketing-wise, if they were able to use the actual properties, it'd be even crazier. But
well, I mean, if they did a King of Tokyo game that was just regular King of Tokyo like board game, but it was all Mothra, Godzilla, Kong, that'd be kind of cool too. But to do it as a CCG, I think,
with your scenario, like you could have, like maybe your buildings or scenarios or.
Do you think it would be a deck builder game, or do you think it would be something more along the lines of Keyforge, where you're not really building the deck?
Oh, no, I think a deck builder would be. Okay. That way you could be like, oh, yeah, mine's all this based. Or
Yeah. I'm not the biggest fan of deck building, but, I could see it. I could understand
on
that.
the quest of printing money.
Right, yeah, no, absolutely.
Deck builders are seem to be the way to go.
Mm-hmm. Let's see here. I am thinking that this is interesting. Okay. This is me not starting the sentence with a tabletop miniatures game version of. Yeah, I'm actually thinking that a dice combat game based off of Warhammer 40K would be very cool. Because Lord knows Games Workshop does like to make dice.
They do.
Every time a new thing comes out, they're like, oh, here's a dice set for it. It's $27.
I think that's the only reason why they keep orcs around is because of all the dice they sell.
Yeah, there are a lot of dice when you're playing orcs. That's true. So when I say a dice combat game, there have been other games out there like that as well, where it's basically like, and sometimes it's a well, I don't know. There have been collectible dice games in the past where you don't know what you're going to get in the pack. Right. I think that's blah. I'm thinking more along the lines of like to some degree, a deck building game, but you'd be building it with dice. So let's say you're going to have, this box is an Imperial Guard box, and it has these dice in it, and you know that. And then you can mix that along with maybe these, Space Marines or whatever, and they can fight together because they're allies, whereas maybe on the other hand, you've got, let's say Dark Eldar and whatever they're called now these days, Drakari, I think, and the Eldari, which are the regular Eldar, the non-Dark Eldar. And then they get to be, or whatever, or you just, it could be even as more granular down to the fact where you're like, okay, this is, these are Primaris Marines, and this is an apothecary, and that kind of thing where you're building like a group. And
maybe you buy the whole faction, and then as you're playing, you get to kind of level up and bring in other troops.
There could be a lot of different things you could do there. There was another dice company. There was a dice game. Was it based off of like DC or Marvel or one of those a couple years back?
Yep.
I can't remember that off the top of my head. Dice something.
Mm-hmm. Yep, that one.
Yeah, I can't think of it either. But anyway,
it just called Dice Builders?
Yeah, maybe. It's kind of a dull name, really.
I wonder how many people are yelling at us right now.
Probably a number. Certainly a number.
This will generate comments.
Yeah, definitely. Not the intention, honestly, but it does happen. So, yeah, I don't know. It's I think it'd be kind of cool to go down that road and to have the ability to be able to do because it would allow you to have sort of fights and combat along the world, along in the lines of the world of 40K, but you're like, but I don't have to paint all these dice. You know what I mean? Right. So that's a benefit.
For people paint your own dice.
Who are not into that.
What?
You could certainly paint your own dice if you want to. I would think they would ship pretty badly in most. I mean, it depends on what you put on.
But then you just sell more paint. And,
Oh, yeah, no, you are a marketer. So I think that'd be a lot of fun, honestly. I don't know. I would like to play that. I don't know. The only issue, I would try to design my own dice game like that, but the problem is that the dice are very expensive to produce. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I think as 3D printing gets better, dice will be easier to produce. It's not quite there.
Yeah,
but Lord knows it's better now than it was 5 years ago. So
a person who, a fan of Rain and Hell, produced an STL file with both six-siders that had the symbol on the 6 and also 12-siders that were an STL file you could print and download download and then print, obviously. But yeah, I thought that was cool. I don't know how
balance,
right? Yeah, that kind of stuff. That would be interesting to check out. But yeah, I think it's very cool that you can kind of get into that road. I've seen people who are making resin RPG dice, so that they can put cool colors in there or glitter or whatever, that kind of stuff.
I'm pretty sure Tinkercad has every dice shape up to D20.
Oh, that would make sense. I would think that would be those would be good primitives to keep into a program or a system like Tinkercad. It makes a lot of sense. What do you got next?
All right, this one I'll have probably everyone's going to look at their listing device the same way you looked at me when I brought this up earlier.
I was confused.
Yes. Okay, so it's Flux the RPG.
Right.
So I'm thinking.
So now, if you're not so Flux, the game from Looney Labs, where you basically just have like a bunch of weird cards.
And the rules are constantly changing. Basically, what you're playing changes the rules, and so suddenly you could be losing, and then you play the right card and you win.
That's why they call it Flux.
Right, or you could be winning and suddenly lose, or you could just, like, the game never ends, and it's just kind of weird and crazy.
But, like, the cards are, like, stuff like chocolate chip cookie, or, like, well, no, not even... Like, chocolate chip cookie is one of the win conditions where you have both, I think, cookies and chocolate in your hand and not milk or something like that. You know, it's a lot of things like that. Like currently you have to have, because the way Flux works is that you have a card that says this is the new rule.
Yep.
And then there's a new win condition.
Right.
And then those can change constantly because people can lay down new rule, new win condition. And the rules might be stuff like, okay, at the beginning of every turn, you have to take 2 cards and then get rid of 1, you know, or that kind of stuff. And then next thing, all of a sudden someone changes it. Now it's take 1 card, get rid of 1, or 3 cards, or, you know, all kinds of stuff.
Yeah,
like
or
that.
each person takes 2 turns in a row or something.
Yeah.
It's always,
So, yeah, that's the reason. But there's not really a story. Now, there are a whole bunch of licensed Fluxes.
Oh, yeah, there's tons out there.
Like, not quite as many as Munchkin.
And then there's the chemistry one is a really good one for learning chemistry because it's all about chemical bonds. You're like, I have to, to win, you have to make water.
Sure.
Well, then I need hydrogen and 2 oxygen cards.
I just usually have to drink a lot of coffee.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But, okay, so I'm thinking Flux takes place in kind of a world like maybe the Large Hadron Collider. Things didn't go so well, and it threw off all the rules of physics. So things are always changing, and maybe you're scientists that are also trying to, you work for world governments that are also trying to take advantage of this and changing the rules of physics. And so everything's in flux.
Sure. Hence the name.
It's the name. As you're playing, and the rules of how the world works changes, and maybe So
no, I mean it would be interesting to see an RPG where not only the story changes, but also even some of the mechanics change. Sort of. I don't want to say randomly, but maybe a little randomly.
Yeah.
Or there'd be events that cause it to happen.
Right. Or maybe at the start of every session, you kind of roll to see what the settings are at that.
Yeah, that'd be kind of fun. Or maybe it's even just something that the GM kind of decides or something.
Yeah, or begin a battle, or or per setting, campaign setting, like
yeah.
That, there's 1/6 of the gravity, and grass is poisonous.
Oh yeah, well that's kind of good then. Then you got less gravity,
right?
You're less likely to touch the grass,
right?
Yeah, no, I think that'd be kind of interesting. I definitely like the concept of. I like the concept of an RPG that changes quite frequently. Again, it's probably not necessarily something that you're going to play as a full-blown campaign. I mean, maybe.
Yeah.
Whenever I think campaign, I think friends of mine that have been playing the same D&D campaign for 4 years.
Right. Or
longer.
The ones that we saw, like the Star Wars one, where they've been playing, like their great-grandfather started the game. And
right, yeah. No, there's a relatively local group that goes to local conventions, and they run a Star Wars RPG that's not based off of the current Star Wars RPG. It's based off of the original Star Wars RPG from West End Games.
Yep.
And but it's like a, what do you call that? Not a procedural world, a persistent world. And they keep it all online to some degree. So if you go to a convention, you went to a convention in 2016 and you played, just kind of hopped in, you started a new character and you played with them for 4 hours or whatever on a Saturday afternoon at this convention. And then you went to another convention next state over, same group, and you're like, oh yeah, I played 4 or 5 years ago with you guys, and then they're like, oh, hang on, and they'll just bring up your character because they have it all in a database that they have access to via the internet, I'm assuming. And yeah, there are people in that game who've been playing for at least 10 years, if not longer.
Oh yeah,
maybe 15. Well, gosh, geez, it's 2021.
Right.
They were coming to the convention that I used to run, that I started in 2001. They may have been at the first or second one of those conventions that I used to run. So yeah, they've been around for a good long time. And that's cool. I mean, it's very interesting. But yeah, I am probably I'm more of the like I would like to play a one-off, please. I think a little bit. That's just me though. Speaking of which, I am not going to start this sentence with a tabletop miniatures game version of.
Okay,
it's weird. And it's actually an RPG.
Ooh,
I know. I would like to see an RPG based off of Stargrave, which is the new skirmish game published by Osprey Games, written by Joseph McCullough. Joseph McCullough, writer of Frostgrave, which was wildly popular from Osprey, and it's going to do its second edition. Yeah, it's so the concept of Frostgrave was basically there was this city, and it was really cool, and there was tons of magicians who lived there, or wizards, whatever, and something went wrong, either by accident or on purpose, and the entire city was covered in ice for 1,000 years. And now the ice is starting to melt, so you and your band of treasure hunters are going into the city to try to find cool stuff and not be killed by skeletons and whatever. That's the concept behind Frostgrave. Stargrave, which is basically, some people will say it's just sci-fi Frostgrave, but it's not. I think there's been some rules changes and some differences. And then, of course, there's the overall story. In Stargrave, it's like the galaxy didn't get frozen for 1,000 years. That's not how that works. No, exactly. What happens, actually, is there's been this very long war that's happened for a very long time, and it is now done, and everybody lost, basically. So
the results are in and everybody lost.
Yeah, there are literally like no governments. Anytime anyone tries to get anything together that starts to become a little bigger than a group of more, a few people or whatever, pirates and warlords come in and are like, yeah, well, we're going to squish that. And then so there's no new governments, there's no new big like forces, there's no new big coalitions, because every time it starts to happen, space pirates come in and squash everybody. And then, there you go. So it's nearly a post-apocalyptic game, but sci-fi, because it's kind of I forget what exactly the term is, but it's like battles in the remnants of the wasted galaxy or something like that, you know. And so basically in that game, and again, this is a miniature skirmish game, but you have a crew. That's what your group is called. And there's a captain, there's a first mate, and then the rest of your people are crew. And so think Firefly a little bit. If you want to go down that road, you totally can. The first group that I'm building for Stargrave are a little Firefly-ish. Like, basically the leader is a veteran. So, because Mal was a veteran. Now, my first mate is a rogue, so not like Zoe.
Right.
Yeah, because she was also a veteran in that situation. But so the first mate's more like a rogue, and then I've got like a robot, and I've got some recruits and a medic and some other stuff. And so, but you kind of build it that way, and I'm and then as you play it, it's best to be played as a campaign game. So you're playing, and then you're like playing multiple missions put together or whatever, and then things happen, and people get upgraded and stuff like that in between missions and such, which has got a very RPG feel to me in general. Anyway. Yeah. And to honestly just make a RPG version of that game, I think would be very interesting.
Yeah,
I don't remember if they made an RPG version of Frostgrave. If it did, it flew under my radar.
Yeah.
But I definitely think it would be a smart idea for them to make some sort of RPG, even if it was just like a 5e, like a 5th edition or something like that, or something.
Right.
They could do something like that, and it could be really cool. Just because there's so many different possible stories that could be told about,
just even
people just kind of like skittering around amongst the
a one shot. It would even be kind of cool just using that as a concept.
Yeah, definitely. So I think that'd be a very good idea, honestly, to make an RPG from. So
nice.
What else you got?
All right, my last one is taking the board game Smash Up. Which
seen it in stores,
which is basically you're always combining two things. So you get like dinosaur pirates, or alien
monkeys,
or gnomes or something like that. Like, so it's just a bunch of just a genre smashed together. But then miniatures, so a miniature game. So it would give you kind of the ability to kit bash tons of different things, or to kind of roll your own.
Yeah. So are you in the because I don't know much about the board game.
It's basically just an area of control game. So you're fighting.
So it's kind of a fighting game.
Yeah.
You've got your pirate
if I remember right,
versus your
and
monkey,
different and the different races have like a pro and a con, but together they sometimes can be good pros and cons that kind of feed together. Sometimes they just don't work together.
Sure. Yeah.
And then but
I think it'd be kit bashing would be something. I don't know. I think kit bashing is something that your average kind of beginner getting into miniatures is not super into it.
Right.
But if they could make them,
if you could do like even like a Hero Forge type, like where you could create your own minis off of it too, where you're like, okay, I need.
What if they made them magnetic? You could like pop the top off and put another. So
kinda
basically,
like,
you got like, what was that game? Bears and Babies or whatever.
Yeah, Bears and Babies, or I was thinking of the video game my kids played for a while. Skylanders, yeah.
Skylanders, yeah.
Yeah, something like that, yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, like, it would be kind of cool to be like, okay, I'm going to have monkey pirates, and so you've got, like, a pirate upper part, magnetized to a monkey lower part, or whatever, and then you could either paint them or not, or whatever, but that'd be kind of cool.
Zombie ninjas and stuff.
Yeah.
Another one.
That'd be kind of a cool thing to do for a miniatures game. Yeah, I could see that. And it could probably be a good gateway game, too. Again, because if the models are already kind of like pre-built to some degree, like if they're a little bit more along the lines of like kind of the plastic that you're seeing from companies like
I take that back.
Not,
it wasn't an
like
area of control. I was thinking it was an area of control, but it was a card game that you basically were fighting against each other, if I remember right.
Okay.
So
it's like more of a card game. Okay, well, that's cool. But yeah, I could see that, definitely.
Yeah, but turning into more of an area of control and you're fighting skirmishes and stuff, yeah.
Yeah. Okay, that's cool. What's my last one? Okay, now this one's going to sound a little weird. First of all, I'm starting off again with a tabletop miniatures game version.
Woohoo, it's back.
Yeah, exactly. So there's that, but a tabletop miniatures game version of Gloomhaven. Now, Gloomhaven comes across, it has miniatures already.
Well, it's for the main characters, yes.
Yes, for the main characters. But it's not really a game of, it's not a miniatures game. It's a board game sort of hybrid RPG.
You're right.
Yeah. But I would like to see nicer models. The models are not bad, but they're not great. I've painted some of them for different projects and things like that, and they're but I would like to see the lore, I think, expanded out into different factions. I mean, it could still be even like a dungeon crawl game. Maybe. I don't know. I'd almost like to see it be more like fighting in a village kind of a thing. You know what I mean? Like a little bit less out of the dungeon, a little bit more, defending a village, that kind of stuff,
Sure.
Having some actual terrain, that kind of stuff. But still using the lore from Gloomhaven, and the Red Guard and this and that and all that jazz. Because it's a really interesting world from what I know of it, which is not a ton, but the stuff that I've seen, I'm like, well, this is very cool. And I feel like it's a really interesting take on fantasy without going crazy. You know what I mean? So I could see that, and then also there'd just be like, because there's really not there's combat in Gloomhaven, but it's not like, it's more like my guy goes into this room and then there's going to be some fighting going on. I would like to see it be a little bit more based off of range and distance. Oh, range and distance are the same thing, but like range and like facing maybe, or that kind of stuff to make it more skirmishy combat.
Right.
That kind of thing.
Yeah. To take it from the RPG range and stuff to actual like cover and 3-dimensional.
Yeah, definitely. And 3-dimensionality would be also really super cool, I think, in that too. But making it a skirmish game. The game is popular enough that I think that it would probably pull in some folks. If you do it right, if you play your cards right, as the company who makes this, you also make it so there are nicer versions of the models that are already in the base game, so that people could then just replace those kind of slightly rubbery kind of models with, but and then they could use them both in the skirmish game, but then they could also be like, well, we're going to play regular Gloomhaven. Cool, I'm going to bring up my really cool looking Red Guard. That kind of stuff. Red Guard's from Jaws of the Lion, I think.
Okay.
Yeah, but anyway, that kind of stuff I think would be really cool. It'd be a lot of fun to be able to work with in that world. I want to just see more fantasy games. And there's a bunch of them out there that I do already enjoy that are like skirmish, like Relic Blade is one, which is a really cool skirmish game that's nearly a completely one-man band. Like the guy who wrote the game did all the artwork as well, including the illustrations and the 3D sculpting.
Yeah.
And he's done all the layout and all this stuff and blah, blah. I mean, he's just, Sean Sutter's his name, and he is He's a Renaissance monster, is what he is right there.
Yeah, let the poor guy sleep sometimes.
I know, exactly. But yeah, it's a very cool game, and they had a successful Kickstarter sometime during the early part of the pandemic, I think.
Nice.
But yeah, so the models are cool and all that kind of stuff. But I would like to see other companies doing kind of skirmishy sort of miniature games. I think they're within a fantasy realm, and I think something like Gloomhaven skirmish game would be cool.
Yeah,
So,
I like it.
You got anything else?
No, that was it from my list.
Okay, cool. Well, there we go. Thanks again for listening to this episode of the GameFor Podcast. If you've got questions or comments and you're watching on YouTube, please leave a comment below. If you're listening via your favorite podcast player or just aren't into the whole YouTube comment section thing, then you can feel free to reach out to us via email at podcast@iamgamefor.com. You can also keep up to date with us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and check out our website at www.iamgamefor.com. That is www.iamgamefor.com. Thanks.